Welcome to Stories from the Mat with Jan, a quiet place for families, educators and experts to come together and build confident learners from the very beginning. I'm Jan. Let's begin. Hello and welcome to Stories from the Mat with Jan. And it's not just with Jan. I am joined by children's author Laura Strachan, who is the author of Pickles, the Mermaid, and Rainy's Journey. These are two wonderful books with a theme of kindness, family, and these are stories that you just want to go back to. So thank you, Laura, for joining us. And I'm really keen for you to tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey into writing children's books.
Thank you. It's such an honor to be here with you today. So, I have been married for 38 years, and my husband Bill and I moved here 6 years ago from Cincinnati to West Virginia, and we love it here. And my daughter is grown, and my kids are both grown. She's 36, and I have a granddaughter through her family, Cedar, who's 4, and then my son is 33. So, I write a lot about my kids, and so thank you.
Well, I think you're a wonderful author. I know that my grandchildren enjoy your stories. They are so beautiful. What I'd be keen for you to share with us is just a little bit about your journey into writing children's books.
Yeah, so I think I always wanted to be a children's author. For many years, I was a teacher for 20 years. And then when I was 40, I ended up having a serious illness. I had cancer. And but it was a gift that I'm still here 26 years cancer free. And it just took me on a different journey. And so I wasn't ready until I moved to West Virginia about 6 years ago. And it's just so funny because when I moved here, I was teaching my neighbor didn't know how to read. He was 14, and his father and his grandfather never learned how to read, and he had dyslexia, and he was homeschooled. So he came up here every day. And then within that next year, they adopted 19 kids within their immediate family. And it was just from reading all these books with all the children that I grew so confident in all these stories that I wanted to write my own.
That is such a beautiful story, and it chimes in with a lot of the things that we've been saying in series one about children and learning and stories, and just taking that little part there. What did you notice the children got excited about when they were reading these stories?
When I was reading the stories for the children, I noticed when I read stories that they were familiar with, because we live in a very rural area, they really connected the most with those. And I remember just I never knew my neighbor had a mule, for instance, and because they were guardians from the coyotes. And so I kept asking them questions about this community, and I learned so much from them. And then there were a lot of stories that I liked that they didn't know about, and so it was just the joy was the curiosity and also sharing what they knew, but learning all about anything and everything. So it just brought a lot of joy to them to see their eyes light up when they would read the stories with me.
And it seems wonderful because when you were reading together, you were both building up confidence too and a lot of trust in each other with the stories that you were sharing. So, can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because I find that absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, so it is interesting because there were always favorites, and sometimes I would have to bring back some of the favorite stories. But I think that it's so important for kids to read and reread stories over and over again because of that. What I noticed about the kids is the first time they're just learning the plot, but especially the boy who didn't originally know how to read, he was so keen on the illustrations, and he would pick up things because I was reading and not really focused on the illustrations. So he was connecting more with the pictures in the story, and that was telling him what was coming next, and he could follow the plot even quicker than when I was reading. And so I find that so interesting. And then as they're reading over and over, I also like the confidence they get and the security in our day and age in the world we live in. We don't always feel like we're in control, but kids need that control of feeling safe. And while they're reading it, it feels like at home, like they're visiting an old friend or something. And as they keep rereading, I find that they pick out new things each time. And so it's really interesting to watch that process. And they become confident because they learn new vocabulary and they remember. And they start to recite things and they remember what happens next. And it's really fun to see their confidence build from reading stories.
Oh, that is absolutely beautiful. And I think that confidence and the stories move in because I know that my grandchildren enjoy Pickles and Rainy. And I've read those books a number of times. What I'm keen to know as a reader of those two books, what inspired Pickles and Rainy? I'm really curious.
So I have a grandniece, and just imagine a 3-year-old with real blonde hair, real curly. And she was with me in the pool right before her brother was born a week prior. And she has an older brother and a younger sister. And so they knew that they had a brother on the way. And so while I was in the pool with her, she had a little mermaid. And I said, now, what is your mermaid's name? She was just obsessed with mermaids. She kept carrying them everywhere she went, even in the pool. So she just thought for a minute and then she just giggled and kept saying, Pickles! And over, Pickles! And I would have never thought of Pickles the mermaid. And I dedicated the story to her because Pickles is just like that. She has pickles, tickles, and giggles. And then the plot came from my son. He was bullied, and so I wanted a mermaid, Rainy, who was a little mean. And I even have little stuffies for my characters. So with Pickles, she's green, and I love my illustrator, Michelle Simpson. She made Pickles from the story of Luca, which is a Disney character, and I wanted all rainbow color, for diversity. So, but I just love Pickles, and Rainy is mean, and that what inspired that was my son, and I almost think of her being like a storm. And so, in the sequel to this, at the end of the story, Pickles is kind to Rainy, and it starts a ripple effect of kindness. And I have a conch shell also in the story that's connected to the emotion of love. And when Pickles finds it, she goes on a journey and she remembers how loved she is. And she's not thinking of being made fun of anymore. She's remembering how it feels, that warm and happy feeling when she's with her friends, and she shares that with Rainey at the end. So the sequel is all about that warm and happy feeling. And what is that? Why was Pickles so kind to me? Why does she let me at the end of the story play the music, the magical conch shell? And she discovers that she can change and grow, and it's all about kindness. And she learns to be kind and to change. And she helps another mermaid named Pepper. She's real sassy. It's another mermaid. So, but it's a lot of fun developing these characters.
So you mentioned about that conch shell, and is there a special story behind that conch shell? Because it's beautiful.
Yeah. So the story behind this was my grandmother always instilled music, and we forget so much. And when you sing your ABCs, it's all connected to song and it holds memory. And also, my grandmother not only taught me music, but when my kids were little, I used to, before they were born, I loved them so much, and I would play lullabies. And so when they were born, the lullabies soothed them and calmed them down. And so it was really a part of my family, that connection of love.
It that was wonderful to share about your conch shell and how music connects to your stories, and that's a wonderful flow because you're right, the ABCs and all the songs and nursery rhymes and things children learn. So thinking about that, what do you most enjoy about writing for young children?
What I love about writing for young children is they're developing their self-esteem and learning a lot about themselves at those crucial learning ages, and they're really our future to our world, and I love helping them just to remember how loved they are and how special each unique child is. And so we all have special gifts, and I that's what interests me is helping kids to tap into that self-love.
And when a child chooses one of your stories, what do you think they're choosing?
Well, they're choosing to enter a whole new world. They get underneath the sea and they have sea creatures that are become their friends, and they learn all about that world. And I like that. They can connect with that world with their own lives, and it's fun. A lot of children love mermaids, and so it's really connecting with that joy, learning about the creatures and the mermaids.
A and one thing I noticed on your website, you have a beautiful photograph of yourself on a beach. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because it's so wonderful to see the beach and you look at home there.
Yeah, so when I was 12, my parents would always go to Florida, but they bought a place, and I'm actually one of 6 girls, and so I kinda grew up on the beach, and my dad jokes that by the time we had all these kids, we always went to Florida. They realized they needed to buy their own place because we kinda got kicked out of going to the places we used to go to. But just growing up on the beach was just so fun, and I always thought about mermaids and sea creatures and sea life, and so I really am at home, and that's my happy place, being on the beach.
So what do you notice when a child really settles into a story? What are the key things?
Well, I love just watching them. I've even witnessed kids reading my book for the first time because it's in the libraries, and they were just sitting together and giggling, and it just really warmed my heart to see that. And I think what happens when kids, it was almost like they didn't even know I was looking at them. They get so lost in the story. And I love that reading Rainbow, how it takes you to a new world that used to be on TV. You would just I don't know if you remember the Reading Rainbow show, but it was that premise that it would just take you anywhere and take a look and read a book and like reading Rainbow, here they are. They were just so excited and sharing and giggling along with reading the story and connecting with it.
You talked about connection and you were talking about the family that you worked with. You noticed children would return to certain stories again and again and again. Do you think that the children are looking for something familiar or comforting, or is it something else entirely? I know you spoke about it before, but I just want to dig a little deeper.
Yeah, I do think it's a lot about being familiar. I think it's the more you read, and it's almost like each time you read it, they're learning new things and they're growing and they have new experiences to bring to the books. And so it's almost like a new book sometimes in the place where they are. And I just find it so fascinating just to see that as they read it over and over, the confidence that builds, the vocabulary and words they didn't know that they learned and they remember. And then it's just the continuation of the growth in not only in the books and learning, but also in them. So I think it's interesting to see that it becomes almost deeper in them as well.
Now, what role do you think kindness and connection plays in children's stories?
Well, I think it is really an important role to have kindness and connection. And and in my stories, I even bring laughter into the story because playing is so important with kids and
Mm.
laughter is so important as and people don't think of that, but laughter it brings connection and children love to play and have fun. And so in my story, Rainey has never had fun because she was bullied all her life and didn't know how to play. And so I even talk about the difference between real genuine laughter versus mean laughter and point the differences out, and choosing kindness even. But I just think kindness is such an important thing because it connects you not only with the family but to the community and to the world. And as learn to be kind, it starts at home and then becomes a bigger picture with the community and the world. And so it's just so important to incorporate that in the stories.
So true. You've worked with children over many years, and what have children taught you about stories?
I think they have taught me a lot about how stories are such a part of their life. They remember stories. We all we learn through stories. It's part of our learning. And so they've taught me a lot about how their cultures are different and how it's fascinating as they're learning new cultures and new experiences through books, that they can learn so much. So that I really enjoy, that with children. I will never forget, for some reason, I had a student that I kept wondering why he was so tired all the time and I don't remember what book we were reading, but I finally asked him, "So, where do you sleep in the room? Do you have your own special room?" And he was sleeping in a bathtub, which was so interesting. But I did get a social worker and we got him a bed. But it was just it's like, so I think you can learn about the kids, through their stories and also learn if things aren't quite right at home because I worked with severe behavioral children, and that was something he just thought was normal, that he would just sleep in the bathtub, but he was always so tired, and so I kinda got to the bottom of that through a story, which is so interesting. So I think stories also open up communication to any kind of problems that may be happening in their lives, and it just helps to have conversations around that.
What do you think children notice that adults will sometimes miss in stories?
I think they notice all the illustrations. They'll pick up on they really notice all the fine lines, not just the words. And I think that's so important that they really pay attention more than you realize to the pictures. And so that's why I enjoy picture books as well. And sometimes the
Yeah.
messages are hidden in a picture book. And that's what I also like is for them to it's not necessarily told to them. They have to kind of find it like a treasure hunt almost, and so I think it's fun for kids. I think that's what's fun about writing children's book is making it so that there's a lot of life lessons in the stories that I write and that it becomes almost fun also because it's not stated. A lot of things are just things that they find. I'll give an example. In Pickles, I have a part where the sea creatures are helping her to find the conch shell, and she meets Twinkle, and that's foreshadows the lullaby coming. But in life, when we get out of our way, the stars align and things just happen. So I put that in the book, and that's something that kids may not pick up, but I put that in for the adults. But and then as she follows the stars align, she follows the starfish. She finds what she's looking for. She finds the conch shell.
That's beautiful. We heard about the bathtub incident, but has a child ever surprised you with their response to one of your books?
Yeah, it really came from a grandparent at one of my book reviews. She had a granddaughter that would come over and didn't realize she was bullied in the school. And so Pickles, he became such a comfort. And she kept rereading the story over and over. And finally, her grandmother, it presented a time for her to talk about the fact that she was being made fun of in the school. She didn't know that was happening. And she said she wanted to be brave, like Pickles. And that just, like, warmed my heart that she felt she could talk about it with her grandma and that she wanted to be brave and that she could do it because Pickles did. And she was empowered, and that,
Oh,
to me, is worth all the writing if I can reach one child like that.
oh, that's that's beautiful. Well, we've come up to the quick fire round. What I'm going to do is ask you a few questions, and you can either give me a one-word answer or a phrase answer. So this is quick fire. The first question is a story you never get tired of.
The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein.
One word that describes your writing.
Self-love.
A favorite reading memory from childhood.
With my grandparents, my grandma was a seamstress, and we loved The Elves and the Shoemaker because in that story, the elves would come through the window and they would make all the shoes for the shoemaker and his wife who were so poor, and then they in turn find out that they don't need to have clothes and they make them little clothes. It was just something my grandparents read to me when I was there. So I just love that story.
I love that one too. And something you hope children are going to take away from your stories.
Well, I hope that they realize that whenever you believe in yourself, anything is possible, and self-belief and really embracing your own uniqueness.
And is there one thing you hope parents, grandparents, or educators remember when they share stories with children?
Yes. So I think it's important just to have open conversations. I do want to share that I have a new story coming out soon about my father. He is currently 92, going on 93, and my mom is turning 92 this month. And this is a story I would have never learned before. It's He raised a red-tailed hawk when he's 8 during the war in 1942, and his dad had gone off to the war, and at the end of the story, I explained that his father came home safely, and it's that generational connection. I didn't realize till I wrote this story that my father became so interested in, kindness, and even at a young age, and he was engulfed in nature, and when he saw this hawk fall out of a nest, his mom let him raise it, and it's a true story about him learning all about hawks and training it to fly free, and then the surprise is at the next spring, the hawk returns, and it's such a joyous because they actually recognize my dad as an 8-year-old, and then it was just so neat, the confidence that he built, and while his dad was off the war learning about freedom, he was learning about freedom with a hawk, and it's just a beautiful story. So I
Oh,
just kids will share their stories, and share stories are what connect us with others, and it'll teach them just to have confidence in writing their own stories as well.
and is there anything you would like to add yourself? Because we're coming near the close, and I thought it would be really lovely if you could close with something that you would like to share.
Yes. So I would just like to share that I'm just so grateful for you, and I really enjoy your stories. And my granddaughter wants to read them over and over. And I also have raised some retired sled dogs, so that might be in the works too, because when they retire, they need a place to live, and I've been doing this since 2014, and that's just something that you haven't maybe learned about myself, that I love these retired sled dogs. So I have an Alaskan Husky, and the others are usually like Inuits. So I've had one since 2014. One had 7 years in the home, and the other had four. And the one lived to be almost 18, and then the other lived to be um, about 16. 2 weeks ago, unfortunately, we had another Inuit that we adopted 2 years ago. And my other dog I've had for 4 years. They're both 13, but they were lead sled dogs together. And so, anyway, she got into some trouble. She was chewing, but she had some issues, and we did a surgery, and she wasn't able to recoup. And so we had to put her down. But it was interesting. I feel like they're always with you, and my I brought my dog with me, and he got to say goodbye to his buddy, and so it's just the two of us right now. It's just so, but dogs are like special, and so just like what we do in the neighborhood is my dog loved treats, and we would always share treats with the neighbors and their dogs, and so we had a celebration of life for my dog, and all the neighbors got treats in honor of my dog.
Oh, well, fur babies are so important. I know your neighbours would have loved those treats too. So, Laura, thank you for joining us for today. It's been so wonderful to have you at Stories from the Mat with Jan, the place where we can get together and chat and talk. And it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. Laura, I just want to take this time to thank you so much for your contribution. It was wonderful to have such a lovely conversation with such a talented author. So thank you once more. What struck me throughout our conversation was how often we returned to the same themes of kindness, confidence, connection, and the stories that stay with us. From a little mermaid called Pickles to a young boy learning to care for an injured hawk during the war. These are the stories that remind us that learning isn't just about facts. It's about relationships, memories, and moments that shape who we become. And perhaps that's why stories matter so much. They help us understand ourselves. They help us understand others, and sometimes they stay with us for a lifetime. Thank you for joining Laura and me today for Stories from the Mat with Jan, a quiet place to think, notice, and begin. So thank you for joining me. Until the next time, take care.